This is the regularly scheduled meeting of ANC 34G. We meet on the second and fourth Mondays of each month. We're glad to have you. I'm Randy Speck. I'm the chair of the commission. I represent ANC 34G03, which is a single-member district that includes the area basically between Utah, Nebraska, and Broad Branch. We're very happy to have all the Wilson High School students here tonight. Hope you'll learn something. What? Yeah. So we'll introduce the commissioners first. Becky, you want to begin?
Hello, everybody. My name is Rebecca Madak. I'm 34G04, which includes Lafayette School and Lafayette Park. So I basically go from Utah to Broad Branch, Tennyson to Nebraska.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abraham Clayman, and I'm the commissioner for ANC 34G01, which includes Hawthorne and Barnaby Woods. It's great to see so many people here tonight.
Chris Fromboludi, Commissioner 3G07, which is the southernmost district in our commission, bounded by military, Reno, Nebraska, and Nevada.
Hello, I'm Jerry Mallitz, Commissioner for 3G05, which is from Chevy Chase Circle, down this side of Connecticut Avenue to about military and across over to Broad Branch.
Hi everybody, good evening, welcome. My name is Dan Bradfield. I represent 3G06, which is the western portion of the district, which is Chevy Chase Circle towards Friendship Heights, Chevy Chase Park, and down towards military.
Okay, we have 6 commissioners here tonight. Commissioner Tuck Garfield is under the weather tonight, so she's not here, but we have a quorum so we can conduct business. The first order of business is to adopt our agenda, which has been published on our website and on the various listservs. Any modifications or changes? Becky?
Yes, we have a modification. Instead of dealing with the Lafayette Elementary School maintenance issues, we're going to have an update on the mayor's lighting advisory panel.
Okay, I think the most recent posted agenda has that change.
Not the dailies.
Oh, really? It's an old one. Okay. So with that modification and change, any other modifications? All those in favor of adopting the agenda? 6-0. Okay. The first item is commissioner announcements. I have a couple. The first is that we've been giving testimony before the performance oversight hearings at the council, and based on the testimony that was approved at our meeting on February 11th, I testified on behalf of the commission before the Committee on Judiciary on the performance of the Board of Elections, and before the Committee on Transportation and Environment on the performance of the Department of Energy and Environment. I tell you what, we'll just skip the announcements for a second. We'll go directly to our first item on the agenda, which is Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. Welcome. Congresswoman Norton has been to our meetings many times before. She is a staple in not only our ANC, but across the district. She is an icon that has been around and involved in DC politics and other issues on the national level for a very, very long time. I've told this story before, but it was, I think, 45, 50 years ago when I first met her on a panel. We ran in New York together. So we go back a very long way. We're very happy to have her, and she's going to report to us on things that are going on Capitol Hill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And it is a pleasure to be back at ANC 3. Is it B or E? 34G. People who don't come from DC may want to know what all those letters and numbers are. But they do help us to keep ourselves together. This time I come to you as a member of the majority. The Democrats have taken over the House, and that is good for DC. Already, for example, no bill has yet been passed to eliminate all of your gun laws. When are they going to do it? You get that, or I have gotten that virtually every term. And there have been, true to form, 3 bills already put in to wipe out certain DC gun laws. But those had to go to the Rules Committee, now controlled by the Democrats. and then we got out of the Rules Committee. So when I say that the district has more to gain, I'm not being partisan. I'm talking about what the Republicans put us through. This last session, they tried to eliminate 7 of our laws that they simply didn't agree with. The district does at least have home rule. We have the statutory ability to pass our own laws, and we're going to insist on it. This is how I like to participate in your ANC meetings. I am not lecturing here about what I have done. I will use some of what's in your packet to prompt me to say things, but I really extol you, invite you, plead with you to stop me at any point so that we can engage in a mutual conversation. You know, if you treat it like, here I am, just I'll tell you what I've done, and you wait until the end to ask me, by that time you forgot what you were going to ask me in the first place. So, or say to me. So you're not only asking me, you're telling me what I ought to know in the new majority and where your own priorities are. Let me tell you how things have changed already. When I first came to Congress, I wrote a memo that said, I can vote, I can vote in committee. When the House meets in the Committee of the Whole, I want to vote on the House floor. The Committee of the Whole was not created by the Constitution. Like the committees, it's created by the Congress. Yet very important things take place there. Not everything is voted in the Committee of the Whole. Some things go back to be voted, same people, but they call it the whole House. So I won that, and I had only 2 years in the majority. When the Republicans came, they took it from me, even though they sued the Democrats who first gave it to me when we were in control. And the district court ruled that it was in fact appropriate under the law to give me the vote in the Committee of the Whole, so that they took it to the Court of Appeals. And they lost there too. And the nerve to take it to the Supreme Court. So nevertheless, though it's been signed off by the courts, when Republicans came to power, they took your vote. Well, we got our vote back now. And I have in fact voted a couple of times already on the House floor. I presided as the Speaker, and the chair of the Speaker, and I've gotten us back to where we should be as we go to where we want to be to become the 51st state. Already, what is this? First 6 weeks? We have 197 co-sponsors of our DC statehood bill. They just come flying on through it. The Senate bill hasn't yet been introduced. We had 30 co-sponsors out of the 50 Democrats before, and I expect that. I don't want you to believe that these co-sponsors in this very hefty beginning means we're going to get statehood this year. We will have a tougher time, even on mild bills, even those that don't matter. You have a tougher time in the Senate. But I'm telling you, and this is what's important here, not only do I think we will get a vote on the House floor on statehood, I think we will win. And that as far as the House of Representatives are concerned, we will win the vote in the House. Then we'll have to do what it takes in the Senate. I won't tell you how important it is not to say, all right, then that will take forever, because that is not how things, you look for openings, and we almost got a vote before. I don't want to stop you unless somebody's interested later on to say how we literally almost got a vote before that we had never contemplated getting. That was a full vote on the House floor. Let me just move on. To tell you why I'm so confident we're going to the House floor with statehood, I just want to read what a sentence or two that Nancy Pelosi, the new Speaker, said. For too long, the residents of the District of Columbia have served our nation in uniform, paid taxes, and contributed to the economic power and success of our country while being denied the full enfranchisement that is their right. H.R. 51, do you get it? 51? The Washington, D.C. Admission Act is a critical step in righting this historic wrong. That's the lady in charge, my friends. We're going to go to the House. We'll probably go at the beginning of the summer. H.R. 1 you may have heard about. That's a bill that talked about wanting more democracy in the House. D.C. was included in that in the findings, laying out in the findings why the district is part of the House's adventure into seeking more democracy all around in our country. Now, I'm not putting all my eggs in the statehood basket. I'm here to tell residents what they already know, or probably already know. We don't even have full home rule. If we had full home rule, we would, and that's what I want to discuss. That's how I want to treat this. Full home rule would mean we would have a great deal of authority and power, even without being a state. It would mean we're in charge of everything. But look at the kinds of things that we don't have, which we can get even without statehood, just by bill. And I think some of these things I will get this time as I go on these two tracks, statehood and the home rule track. For example, local prosecutor. You don't have a local prosecutor, a district attorney. The U.S. attorney is who prosecutes crime in the District of Columbia. Why shouldn't there be some local prosecutor either appointed by the mayor or, as in some states, simply elected? National Guard, I'll just give you a couple of examples. There are 16 of these bills. National Guard. I don't know, well, some of you in this room were here when we had snow together. Or you have a hurricane or a flood. If you are even a territory, Virgin Islands, one of those, they can call out their National Guard. They're the only ones that know anything. We have to go to the president, and by that time we'll all be drowned. So, what it's like on emergencies like that, to have our own way.
Could I ask
Yes.
one question
What
about
was this example? It stops me.
I was trying to pick up on that. What do you think about the recommendation by the mayor, or I guess agreement by the mayor, to have prosecutions of offenses under federal statutes, federal gun laws particularly, in federal court rather than bringing them in superior court? It seems to me that that's sort of ceding some of the authority to the federal government, where we ought to be doing that ourselves.
That was controversial in the city, but it's why we ought to have our own U.S. attorney, about our own DA. So that U.S. attorney took the initiative, because there has been a spate of gun crimes in the District of Columbia. Whether or not putting them in to federal court will do is guarantee longer sentences. Perhaps we need longer sentences. The district court could give longer sentences as well. So that really is not, that wasn't the mayor's decision. She indeed said, all right, you know, what's she going to do? The U.S. attorney wants to do it. She doesn't have any control over it. Many people in law enforcement wonder if that will make a difference. It seems to me one step that might have been taken is that the court itself might have, the Superior Court, might have been told, you know, we may get the U.S. attorney removing these matters from you, and to see what that did. I've already put out a release saying that we're going to be moving to hearing on D.C. statehood. Elijah Cummings, who's head of the committee, has already indicated that, and I thanked him for it. So we're well on our way. The report came out on who had introduced the most bills in the last Congress, the 115th Congress. It was yours truly, Chief Cummings. Being in the majority would mean a lot for the district in a lot of ways. But one way is I have built my seniority on a committee to get where I have gotten with Democrats in charge. I am chair of the DC subcommittee on highways and transit. That does that's part of oversight, that's a part of infrastructure, transportation and infrastructure. Now, that having jurisdiction over Metro and going through what's transpiring now is really important, particularly since there are 3 jurisdictions involved. And of course, what you can see about roads, highways, and the rest, and that's not why I got on this committee. It has a subcommittee called Economic Development, which has allowed me to rebuild entire sections of the District of Columbia. How many of you have been to the wharf down in Southwest? That is my bill. It was lying there, bringing no revenue to the district, no fund. It's fun and games down there now, restaurants, amenities, housing. The Southeast waterfront, I don't know if you've gone there, perhaps some of you have gone there, the same kind of thing, amenities on the Southeast waterfront. That's because of a subcommittee of this committee, the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, that deals with economic development, and I'm on that subcommittee. Yes, sir.
With that being said, the land at RFK, what's your take about the land at RFK, and are you opposed to bringing the Washington football team back?
This is a very important question about RFK. Did you hear it? No. The RFK, that's a huge block of land, of course, where the Redskins used to play. And it's been lying fallow forever, it seems. And there's a controversy as to how to deal with it. First of all, there's a problem with the name. I hate the name, and some members of Congress didn't want to transfer it to the district without having a change of the name. I'm on bills to change the name and all the rest of it. So this is where it stands now. We have worked out a deal that we simply want to transfer the land to the District of Columbia with no guarantee whatsoever on names and no guarantee as to how it will be used. We simply want it to be used. Some want it to be used for housing and other kinds of recreation. With that in mind, we've got national. We've got the subcommittee chair revolving on our side. He is now the chair, and we do expect that it will pass. It is way past time. President Trump put out a tax bill. It continues to do nothing for anybody. You know, you're going to see when they're going to hold back more of your, you're not going to get as much withholding as you thought you would get. It seems to be having the opposite effect. So there was a tax bill for the 1% and corporations, essentially. Everybody else got left out here. But I wanted to get in it because tax bills don't come. And there are all kinds of things you can do in a tax bill. So I partnered with Senator Tim Scott. He's the only African American in the Senate. He's from South Carolina. And I have a portion of that bill that will allow investments in low-income communities. In our city, it will be towards 5, 7, and 8. So we're in the bill that I oppose, and that's how the Congress works too. There is another section of the bill that I wanted to be in there for. It allows investments in what are called private activity bonds. The district has become an impossible place to live because of the cost of housing and of course rent that goes along with it. So that's the other reason I wanted to get in this bill. So you can get in a bill and then vote against a bill. Of course I couldn't vote one way or the other. But I did want to get in that bill and I can vote on amendments. I didn't vote on amendments in that bill because I didn't have it quite yet, but I got it in the Senate and the House bills. I guess it is tomorrow that the bill to allow us to invest in our own parks is going to come back to the House. It's a lands bill. I wanted DC in this bill because the National Park Service owns all of our parks. We like to have them own it because they keep the grass cut. There's less to be expense to the city. So the city has never wanted to take over these parks. Some of them are huge. Many of them are neighborhood parks. But some of those parks we would like investment in. So this bill will allow the district and the local business and the federal government to invest in essentially rehabilitating our parks. The first one is going to be Franklin Park downtown. We have only two so-called riders on our appropriation bill. We're aware that before you can spend your own money, it has to come to the Congress. And Congress doesn't look at it, doesn't care anything about it, and I like that. Because they used to care a lot about it. There used to be a DC committee that was just like the city council. We got rid of all that. I mean, all of that is gone. But it still passes through. And that allows these amendments to be put on that we are against. There are only two on there now. We're hoping to get them on. They're very controversial for Republicans, less so for Democrats. And they are products really of the House and not the Senate. The district is the only jurisdiction in the United States that can't pay itself, use its own money to pay for abortions for low-income women. The reason it wants to do that is because it does not want any women in the city not able to take advantage of what other women can take advantage of. So that is one of the things that the Republicans have always stood in the way. And the other is marijuana. And marijuana, I do have to tell you, I almost joke about it.
I have a
Yes, sir.
Do you think that DC should take this opportunity with a Democratic Congress to start passing laws that they knew that the Republican Congress would veto?
Such as?
Use your imagination. Could be any number of things that over the past few years, maybe DC didn't vote on it because they knew there was no chance that it wouldn't get vetoed by a Republican House. Do you think that DC should take an opportunity now to start passing some laws that they know they have a friendlier, not foe, but a friend in Congress?
Well, actually, that's a very interesting question. But let me say, I don't think DC has ever held back, even when they thought that the law would be overturned. In fact, the two I just mentioned, the abortion law, stands right behind it, and behind low-income women and their right to based on their constitutional rights under Roe versus Wade. And the other one that I'm about is marijuana. And on marijuana, I think there are a dozen states who have legalized marijuana. Now, technically, it's not legal as a federal matter. But even the Republican Congress hasn't bothered to do anything about it. So the city council, to take your point, did the very same thing. And the Congress tried to overturn it, but they're not always very smart. And they did not manage to overturn it because they did not use the correct language to do so. So I advised the district, marijuana is legal still in the District of Columbia, 2 ounces, but you can't sell it, we can't tax it, you can't do what everybody else can do. So we're trying to deal with the marijuana one at all. The president wanted to hold a military parade. We went apoplectic because we would have all these tanks rolling over our city streets, and it would cost a lot of money. I don't think we did it. I think the Pentagon did it, said don't do that. But have you heard this morning, the latest? on 4th of July, and to go to the Lincoln Memorial. Look, everybody, maybe some of you have gone to where we go. We go right in front of the Capitol, then people are sitting on grass all the way down the way. So I'm going to be tweeting on that one. But it's one that maybe it's because his inauguration didn't get the turnout. He's hoping, well, let's take the 4th of July. Maybe he needs to be briefed on this. You can't have two big 4th of July celebrations.
We're going to be running out of time soon. Maybe we should see if we've got some questions from the audience. One from the press. Davis.
Any thought on turning DuPont Circle and some other parks or through the city?
No, I'd rather do it with this bill I have. That would be very difficult. Because there is a rule, and it is a rule that wasn't made for the District of Columbia. But it's a rule that says the Congress will never give up parked land. And that's really meant for more parks. And it's really meant for states in the West who covet land because the Park Service owns most of the state. So there's this rule, you don't give up park land because once you give it up, you're going to have to keep giving it up. So the district will keep, the district will use this lands bill to renovate its parks, but it can't turn over those parks. It wouldn't get much by turning over those parks. They mow the lawns, you know, they don't keep them, they don't put flowers on them the way they used to do, but they keep them alive and kicking. All we want is the opportunity to take these parks and make more of them. And we think we can do that with the so-called lands bill that is coming out tomorrow that is going to do exactly that at Franklin Park, and then they can do that in parks in your neighborhood as well. That's without DC taking over the parks, which would add significantly to their budget to keep those parks all over the city up. If we can have our cake and eat it too, and that's what we almost have to do, because the Park Service would never give up those parks under any circumstance.
Can I ask one question too about government shutdown? I know that Congress has been considering statutes that would prevent future government shutdowns. What's the possibility that that's going to get passed?
The shutdown question is very relevant to us. It really hurt our economy terribly because all those federal workers, 800,000 of them, a good portion of them would have been shopping downtown and the rest. What is going on? There has been a bill put in. In fact, there are a number of different kinds of bills. One would say keep the government going on a continuing resolution. Many Democrats, and I think even the Speaker, have come out against that because they're afraid that the Republicans will use it as a way not to increase spending. So keep them at last year's spending levels, the Congressional resolution, and just keep the government open. Well, they keep it open this year and next year and the year after that, so I don't think that's going to happen. I can't believe that the government hasn't learned its lesson after the harm done by that shutdown. There are one group of people, there are a large number, who was hurt the worst. DC federal workers, all got paid finally, but much of the work of government today is done by contract employees, and they did not get any back pay. That is a crying shame. I mean, they're doing the same work that federal employees did. The only reason it's done by contractors is, frankly, to save money on health insurance and on other pensions and the rest of it. But you shouldn't be left out in the cold. And of course, and I'm, by the way, leading the pack. It's my bill, it's the lead bill to bring contractors under the scope of that.
Okay, any other? Yes.
So I have a question about public housing and affordable. I had a question about like affordable housing, since you're in charge of development and maybe overseeing that. As like somebody who like works with people daily, I was just wondering what your views on like their conditions or.
Yeah, you talk about public housing. You talk about
like affordable housing, like.
Oh, wait, but they're not the same thing. There's affordable
I mean,
housing.
affordable housing complexes like Potomac Gardens, or
Yeah.
like places like in Anacostia.
Yeah, well,
What's your-
Potomac Gardens is Rockaway, located in my own Capitol Hill neighborhood. But public housing is not going to be replaced. We have very little of it as it is. And it is kind of spread throughout the city. What is in trouble is what is called Section 8 housing. And Section 8 housing is housing that is rental housing throughout the district. And the government pays a third of it for people who can afford to live in that housing. And we have not expanded on that housing in a very long time. And in fact, there are people who probably have been on a waiting list for 20 years to get into Section 8 housing. So housing is all of what it takes to keep this society going. Where we have really failed is with affordable housing.
And is there any development going to be like coming to that, or is it just kind of like in the wind? It's just
Are there, you mean any more public housing going to be built?
because I just see it disappearing more than any development coming to it.
It doesn't disappear.
I mean, like,
It doesn't. If there's a public housing in DC, nobody is taking that and using it for private housing. That doesn't get done. It's owned by the federal government. But what we're not doing is expanding public housing so that if somebody wants to get into public housing, so they put their name and they just won't go looking for housing elsewhere because they're likely not to be alive and kicking, because they got to wait for somebody to move out because there's no expansion of public housing. No expansion of Section 8 housing. There might, in fact, be able to move. There's a gentleman here.
Yes, sir. This will be the last question, okay?
I've been tearing down DC General, the homeless shelter, the biggest homeless shelter in the city. And I know they had plans that they were going to build smaller shelters in like each of the other wards, but they haven't really begun doing that. Do you know what the plan is about the small shelters?
Well, they have begun doing. I think they've opened a couple. There's one plan for this ward, and I don't know when it's coming, but what?
It's coming Q1 2020.
Say that again.
It's coming Q1 2020.
2020.
In this ward.
First quarter, 2020.
And I once knew where it was to be, but that housing is going to be. So the promise has held up, and DC General is closed down, and it's not clear what's going to happen to DC General. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Okay, we really appreciate the Congresswoman coming out and speaking to us every year, updating us on what's going on the Hill. Okay, we're going to go back to where we picked up before. Let's get the announcements out of the way. I was starting to say that we participated in the oversight hearings at the council for the Committee on the Judiciary with regard to the Board of Elections, and with the Committee on Transportation and Environment with regard to the Department of Energy and Environment. Both of those were very, very well received by the chairs of those respective committees. I also testified this morning before the Committee on Transportation and the Environment with regard to DDOT. All of those had been approved at our prior meetings. The one that got postponed, and it was because it was a snow day, we got closed, was the testimony on the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. That's been postponed until March 4th. The only other announcement I had was a reminder that the Library Master's Facility Plan, they're holding community meetings on this, and the one in our neighborhood will be on February 26th at the Tinley Library at 7 o'clock. That's 4450 Wisconsin Avenue. Okay, Becky, announcements?
Yes, I have 2 announcements. Lately in the community, there's been some conversation about a suspicious person caught on a security camera. And the only thing I want to say about that is, don't question whether to call the police. Remember the saying, if you see something, say something. Just call 911 and let them sort it out. The second announcement I have is, in mid to late March, we're going to have the meeting on the Lafayette Rec Center project. We're waiting for a date as we speak.
Hi everyone, 2 quick announcements. One first is about Wise Road. Wise Road is a road that many people in this community use to get across town. It will be closed beginning of May or the end of April as part of the Beach Drive reconstruction. That is not a new piece of information. What is new is that the National Park Service will be doing some work on the road. They will work to repair it. There's also been some conversation on the community listserv about potholes on that street, and if you've driven on it, you've probably seen for yourself. So while it is closed in the spring and summer, there will be work to repair it. The National Park Service is currently planning the scope and sequence of that work, and will provide more details about it when it is a little closer to closing the road. If you have questions about that, you can let me know. I'm happy to provide more information when I have it. And the second announcement is about cleanup in Pinehurst Tributary. Pinehurst Tributary, right between Hawthorne and Barnaby Woods, is a very nice area, but only because it is kept that way by many, many, many volunteers. And so a man named John Burwell, who works with the Rock Creek Park Conservancy, he's organizing a cleanup to be held in April. That cleanup will be on Saturday, April 13th at 9 a.m. The meeting spot will be at the corner of Oregon and Beach. I know that's a ways away, but these events really keep the park looking nice and usable for many, many years, so I encourage anyone interested to go. Again, corner of Oregon and Beach, 9 a.m. Saturday, April 13th.
I just want to make a quick announcement. There'll be more on this at the March 11th meeting, but ANC is organizing 2 committees one to look at the design, to monitor the design of the new Chevy Chase Community Center, and the second committee will be monitoring the construction of that center. I will chair the design committee, and Mr. Speck has said he's going to chair the construction committee. We will hold public meetings at project milestones, and we will work with the DGS and DPR who administer and will be monitoring the design. As I said, there'll be more information on this committee at the next ANC meeting, March 11th, and we're looking for members of the ANC and the public to participate. If you don't want to belong to the committee, you'll be able to come to the public meetings. Right now, the schedule has been delayed a little bit on the community center, so it's looking like right now the architect selection will occur somewhere in early April, and the notice to proceed, so the actual award of the design contract won't take place until May 1st at the earliest. May 1st at the earliest. But that could change. As I said, that's the end of that announcement. Stay tuned to the next meeting for more information.
I have no additional announcements at this time.
All right, community announcements. So we have someone from the mayor's office, Jessica.
Hi, everybody. Hello. I'm Jessica Wertheim, and I am the mayor's Ward 3 liaison. and I just want to let you know about a couple upcoming events. Tomorrow, the mayor will be celebrating the 3rd anniversary of the DC streetcar, and she will be highlighting several transportation initiatives for residents and visitors across all 8 wards. So this will also include a new incentive for our veterans. So if you're interested in attending that, there will be cake, and it is going to be at 3 p.m. at 1233 H Street Northeast. Another upcoming event, this Wednesday, I don't know if you all know, but every month the mayor does a community walk in a different ward of the district. And this week she's walking in Ward 3 in the Palisades community. So if you're interested in joining, she will be leading a walk and will be joined by administration officials to discuss strategies for preventing property crimes such as theft from auto, which, as many of you know, has been a concern to residents. The last thing I want to let you know about is the Her Story 5K at Yards Park in Southeast, which is on March 2nd at 9 a.m. In addition, if you have any community questions or concerns, for example, I heard someone asking about the short-term family housing. I would be more than glad to speak with you about that and give you all the updated information about that. So please feel free to come talk to me at any time. All right.
Thank you. Anthony?
Good evening. I'm Anthony from Councilmember Che's office. I have 3 quick announcements. One, again, is related to oversight. Tomorrow is DC Water's oversight hearing. It starts at 10 a.m. and will be held in room 120. If you would like to, signing up to testify is kind of, it's too late for that. But if you want to submit written testimony, you can do so for up to 2 weeks after the hearing date. Please send your written testimony to be made part of the official record to Ms. Akima Benjamin in our office. Her email address is first initial A, last name Benjamin @dccouncil.us. So DC Water's oversight hearings tomorrow. Second, also tomorrow night is DDOT is hosting its first what it's calling a listening session, first of many listening sessions as part of its Rock Creek Far West livability study. It's a bit, the area encompassed by the study is a bit far away from Chevy Chase. It's everything west of Massachusetts Avenue, but if you are a pedestrian driver, biker, and find yourself west of Massachusetts Avenue, feel free to go to this listening session. It is going to be held from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Palisades Library. That is at 4901 V as in Victor Street, Northwest. For more information about the Rock Creek Far West livability study, go to rockcreekfarwest.com. And lastly, DMV's oversight hearing is February 28th in room 123 at 11 a.m. It is not too late to sign up to testify at the DMV's oversight hearing, so call our office at 202-724-8062 or email, again, Ms. Akima Benjamin. Thanks.
Okay, anyone from Councilmember Todd's office? Okay, we had one other announcement, I think, from DC Water.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Tanya Hechpa. I'm the Construction Outreach Coordinator for DC Water. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you this evening. I just have a few announcements related to the Oregon Avenue Bingham Drive sewer rehab project. It seems like it will never end, but it will be ending soon, needless to say. So sewer rehab work on Oregon Avenue is completed. Oregon Avenue is open. DDOT is pending their work on Oregon Avenue, I believe, in the coming months. I haven't attended the last update meeting with them. However, Bingham Drive remains closed. We had planned to fully restore Bingham Drive this spring, but our plans have been placed on hold by National Park Service and the Department of the Environment. Our team has completed a walkthrough about 2 weeks ago with the National Park Service and DOEE to discuss the restoration and opening of Bingham Drive. We don't know how long it's going to take for us to be able to perform this work. We're waiting on a DOE response for permitting the restoration. As you know, National Park Service and DDOT have been performing rehab work on Beach Drive since September of 2016. There are no plans, as far as I know, to reopen the roadway to the public until the end of this year, tentatively. So if we were to restore Bingham Drive and reopen it, it would basically dead end into Beach Drive. So there would be no access onto Beach Drive, so Bingham would be open, but you couldn't go any further than Beach Drive, which means it basically would become a dead end street. You have to turn around and come back. So unfortunately, that's where we are right now. So we're hoping to get the permits from National Park Service and DOE to restart our restoration work. So this way it'll be paved and it'll look nice and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, I just don't know when they will allow us to open it up to the public. But I'm believing, and I don't quote me on this, but I'm believing it's because they don't plan on opening Beach Drive anytime soon. Like I said, probably not to the end of the year, and therefore making it a one-way street. So I wanted to make sure that I, came today to talk to you about. I've been talking to the Commissioner Clayman about this, just to explain to you why, when we were last here, we told you that we were going to do this work in the spring, and when you won't see us out there restoring it. It's not that we're just not doing it. It's just that we've been delayed by other agencies. So that's where we are, unfortunately. So if you have any other questions, you guys, I'll wait out in the hallway and we can talk a little bit more about it, and I'll answer questions.
The trail will still remain open though, right?
Yes, the trail will remain open.
Okay.
Just not the road. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, claps. Miss.
Okay, Jerry, you want to introduce Peter Lynch?
Sure. Thanks. This was originally set up so that Peter would follow exactly on the heels of Congresswoman Norton, but a little break there for some community announcements. Peter represents, he's a delegate from the Ward 3 Democrats, and he's here to talk about, we heard from Congresswoman Norton about some of the activities going on in Congress in regards to statehood, but Peter's going to talk a little bit more about other community activities that are going on and that are needed both here and around the country in terms of getting DC statehood.
Thank you so much. My name is Peter Lynch. I'm an English teacher, and I also was born and raised in DC. And coming back to DC in 2015, I think I got a little more frustrated with the lack of representation here. I also want to say it's just great to see so many young people here today. This might be an ANC record. Raise your hand if you're under the age of 25.
Well, I'm under 25.
That's awesome. Well, anyway, enough about me. I think what you heard from Eleanor Holmes Norton is she's doing a lot of hard work. And one of the things that I was hoping to help with and hoping to get behind is doing more volunteer work to support her efforts at the top end, but getting it going at the grassroots level, which is already in place, but we can continue to do more. To that end, I've invited Josh Birch from Neighbors United for DC Statehood, and then Noah Wills, who is from Students United for DC Statehood. So hopefully if you're interested and you want to get involved, these are two great grassroots supporters who have been organizing and have been setting up the grassroots foundation to get some of this stuff done. So that's about it. Please come see these two guys to get involved, or myself. And yeah, absolutely, come in.
Thank you guys. My name is Josh Birch. I'll hand out some flyers, so if you forget every single thing I say, put these in your pocket, and that might be a reminder later. I'm a DC native. I live in the Brookland neighborhood. In 2011, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired of not having senators and a voting representative. And so I went to my neighborhood civic association, the Brookland Neighborhood Civic Association, and we created a statehood committee as part of that civic association. And one of the things we would do is go out and educate other residents about what it meant to become a state. And then we started going up to the Hill and advocating for DC statehood. And we've been doing that now for 8 years, where we, this Wednesday, in fact, I've heard a couple other announcements. We have a lobby day on Capitol Hill. Over 400 people have signed up. There's multiple groups. There's Noah's group, there's my group, there's DC Vote. We're all working together. I've been setting up the meetings in the U.S. Senate, so we have 16 Senate meetings. And by the end of the week, we hope that the Senate bill will be introduced by Senator Tom Carper. My group is not a nonprofit. We are a all-volunteer citizen group, so we don't have any money. So on the, which is fine. We've been really effective with no money. But on the back of these flyers are 5 different things that every single DC resident can do to help push the statehood cause forward. And then in these business cards, there's information where you can just go to one website and you can get a template letter. You can get the 13 U.S. senators that we're focusing on this year to try to get to co-sponsor the statehood bill, and all that's on these business cards. So I'm going to pass these out before I leave, and I'm going to let Noah talk. But thank you guys for coming out, and every little bit you can do for statehood is something that helps immensely. Believe me, we've made a lot of progress in the last 8 years, and I think we'll be there in the next 8. Thanks a lot, y'all.
Hello, my name is Noah Wills. As Peter said, I am with a group called Students for DC Statehood. We are a nonprofit organization here in DC. We try and educate and mobilize students and young adults to advocate for statehood for people of the District of Columbia. So I'm here also with Josh. We want to talk about the big lobby day happening on Wednesday. You can go to DC Vote's website to sign up directly, and they'll pair you with a group. But more ways you can get involved. I'm so glad to see so many young people like myself out here. And if this is any indication, I would say that the statehood movement can really gain momentum with more youth involved. So some more ways you can get involved. Obviously, you can call your congressman, but you can call somebody you know who has a congressman. So hopefully you'll do that if you can't come to the lobby day. You can also sign up with both Josh and I. My organization's website is called studentsfordcstatehood.org. You can find all the information there. We actually have chapters at local DC universities, and we use DC's attractive nature to students to try and expand the statehood message both here in DC and nationwide. There's also, because we're in Ward 3 right now, there's an event at AU tomorrow night about voter suppression that we're co-sponsoring. So I hope you will all maybe attend that. But be sure to stay in touch. I know Josh and I both use Twitter a lot. Our Twitter handle is @StudentsForDC, so you can find a lot of information there as well. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's really important work, and we're glad you're out there doing it. Thank you.
Can I ask something to that?
Yes, Phil.
We have, my name is Phil Thomas, I'm the chair of the Ward of Democrats.
Would you speak in the microphone over there?
Yes, sir. I thought I was the last.
So my name is Phil Thomas. I'm the chair of the Ward 3 Democrats. Is one that has I do wear. And we have our meeting this Wednesday with the Attorney General, Carl Racine. It's actually right down the street at 4901 Connecticut Avenue, Forest Hills home, at 7 p.m. And as my tenure as chair, we have a task force, and any board president or any community member can be on the task force. And one of the task force we have set up is statehood. Hopefully, well, we have Peter here that he'll lead that task force, is what I want to add on to that. So please come to the meeting, and we have different task forces as well.
That's Wednesday night, did you say?
Yes, Wednesday the 27th at 7 p.m. at Forest Hills Home, 4901 Connecticut Ave.
Okay.
With a Statehood task force.
Okay, thank you, Phil. All right, Becky, want to talk about Streetlight Advisory Task Force?
Yes. So in January 2014, as many of you know, this ANC formed a Streetlight ANC Lighting Task Force in response to public outcry from neighbors along a Green Alley project when new LEDs were put in, and they were very bright, and a lot of light trespass, which meant it was shiny in their homes, in their yards, and they were having trouble sleeping. So we've been working with DDOT on that for a long time, not making a lot of progress. And currently, though, we're on hiatus because the mayor has sworn in a lighting advisory panel. And so Laura Phinizy is here. She's from the ANC Lighting Task Force, but she's also a member of the panel. So she's going to bring us up to date on what they're doing. They're advising DDOT on some of the lighting issues in the city with these new LEDs.
Too, as well. Laura testified today, I think, at the DDOT hearing, or did you make
Someone
it?
read the testimony on my behalf.
Okay, there were.
I'm sorry.
There were several representatives from the advisory panel who were outstanding. They were very, very good.
Great.
So,
I look forward to watching it.
Councilmember Che certainly heard an earful.
Good. Okay, great. My name is Laura Phinizy, and I am on, as you heard, on the Streetlight Advisory Panel. This is a group.
Speak into the mic.
Just get really close. Okay, am I close enough?
Yes.
I'm afraid I'm going to kiss this thing. Okay, but so we are a group. Usually there are 9 of us. The website says there should be 20, but 9 of us are sworn in, to my knowledge, of citizens selected by the mayor to discuss and give feedback to DDOT as it goes through the process of designing and implementing citywide streetlight plan. We began meeting in October. We've had 5 meetings so far. We will meet through the design phase of the contract, which will be about 6 months more, and then construction, which will be another 24 months more, and then through the first year of operations. So this is about a 3-year gig. Most wards are represented, except for Ward 3 does not have anyone on the panel. Well, except maybe for me with the ANC 3-4G, but it's like tiptoe into Ward 3. The meetings are open to the public. They are held the second Tuesday of every month, the Wilson Building, and the next one will be March 12th. We do not have decision-making authority. We're like one data point that the city is using, along with concerns from like Vision Zero, 311 calls, MPD, etc. Becky gave me a few questions to answer. Just shoot me the time if I talk too long. Okay. She asked if there was consensus on the streetlight panel, and the answer is yes and no. There is consensus in the sense that everyone is in favor of using less energy and saving money by using less energy. Everyone's in agreement on that. But we are not in agreement as far as the color of the lights, the brightness of the lights, the shielding of the lights. Mostly the ones of us who are residents in Northwest and Northeast think the proposed lights are too bright, too white, need more shielding and for glare and also for light pollution. And we are concerned about unnecessary light pollution, the health effects, light trespass, glare, and some security concerns, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. But the members from the business district and some of the members from Ward 7 and 8 do like the brighter lights and are concerned about the security there and want lights for that. So I think the biggest barrier to consensus is that right now DDOT wants a one-size-fits-all plan for the city. They're looking at basically 3 levels of wattage, which roughly translates to 3 levels of brightness. And they want a balanced approach. They keep saying we're going to go down the middle, but I think they're going to end up with people unhappy at both ends. I have asked DDOT to consider a slightly larger, like limited menu options to allow different neighborhoods to have, different amounts of light as they see fit. I don't think the citizens here would be happy with the quality of life that we would have under the proposed lights, but I don't want to dictate what another neighborhood gets if they think they need more. So another question Becky had was, how would these new lights mean? What would they mean for us in Chevy Chase? So under the current lights, they would be brighter and wider. They also will look brighter, even though the technical measurement is the same, because they will have more blue-white light. But they could look more than doubly bright what we have now. There also could be substantially more glare, especially if one's house or sidewalk or car is downhill from an LED fixture. Many of you may have, say, driven up McKinley Street from Connecticut into the neighborhood and seen, like, on the hill when the car or one of those e-buses is coming at you with those bright headlights, and it's quite bright. And I think that's particularly going to be a challenge for our older drivers because of some changes in eye structure, which make eyes very sensitive and less adaptable to changes in intensity. There would also be a significant increase in sky glow or light pollution, especially in the blue-white light. And there are a number of health concerns related to that, including sleep disruption, disruption of the melatonin production, which suppresses cancer cells, disruption of nocturnal life, migratory animals, pollinators, disruption of plant growth. And the last change that you wouldn't see immediately, well, you might not see immediately, but is a real possible threat to us, is a degradation of GPS-dependent systems because of the sky glow. GPS is the global positioning system. It's basically what gets you an Uber driver to your house as opposed to the house down the block, gets 911 to your house as opposed to the house down the block, which drops a bomb on Osama bin Laden as opposed to a house full of civilians. And the reason that these lights would affect that is because the U.S. Naval Observatory, which is in Washington, D.C., takes measurements of stars. And I didn't know this until last month when they gave us a tour, that the GPS is dependent on the USNO is responsible for the standards of both location and time. And they use the measurement of stars to get the precise location. But the stars move, and some of the stars that look to us like single stars are actually like pairs of stars, like rotating like ballroom dancers or something. And so they have to get the positions, and if they don't get their accurate data because they can't measure it because the sky glow is interfering with their telescopes, then their GPS will get off. And they can't just move out to Wyoming because their data is longitudinal, it's over time, and that allows them to do these complex mathematical calculations which affect location. So, that is where we are. Do you have any questions? Yes?
So I just want to find out where we are. We talked about a year ago, DDOT was pushing 4,000K streetlights. Are they still pushing 4,000K streetlights?
No, it's better than that, but it's still not perfect. They are advocating for 2,700 Kelvin, which is about like an incandescent light bulb in most residential areas. 3,000 Kelvin, which is kind of clear white on some commercial areas.
Let me interrupt you here. Just tell people what kelvins are.
Kelvin is a temperature scale. It's the gaps between the degrees are about the same as Celsius, but it starts at absolute zero. So, and the higher the number, the wider, or the bluer the light, the lower the number, the warmer the light. So the yellowish high pressure sodiums that we have on the streets, they're about 1,800 Kelvin. A light bulb in your house, an old incandescent, would be maybe 2,600, and then you go up higher from there.
So that's what 2,700 I think was what everybody wanted. So what's the problem now? They want too bright, lights are too bright, is that it?
Right, it's the amount of the light. So, and tell me if I get too techie here, because we've been kind of digging down deep in this stuff. So it's not just the color of light, it's the brightness of the light, right? You might have a dimmer switch and you can turn it on, you know, high or low. So the brightness of these lights would be significantly higher if they are put in and run at 100%. Like if you go down by Broad Branch Market at the corner of Northampton and Broad Branch, there's an LED fixture there that's 35 watts. And if you look at it, you don't really notice a significant difference between that and the other lights on the street, which are incandescent. But DDOT is proposing to put 110 watt fixtures on all residential streets. So that's 35 times 3. So that's 3 times as bright. And they had said at one point that they were going to dim them down to 80% to start with, but that's still 88 watts, which is like 2.5 times as bright. The alleys, they're looking at 75 watts, which is what they had started with in the Green Alley project, and Becky spent hours trying to get those undone because of citizens' complaints. So they're much brighter, and that's and then in the commercial areas, they're looking at I think it's 215. Yeah, 215. So that's again like a 400 watt high pressure sodium. So they're quite brighter, and even the 2700 watts, they have so much more blue light in them. They have roughly double the amount of blue light that the sodium lights have in them. So I think the best way to explain this, you know when you go to the eye doctor and you get your eyes dilated and you have to wear those really dark glasses because the lights feel so bright. So that's at night, the rods in your eyes work to see light instead of the cones, and the rods are really triggered by that blue light, so that those lights hit your eyes at a level that the yellow sodium lights don't hit. And so that's also a concern. And blue light is also not filterable by the Naval Observatory. So, and it scatters in a different way. So it's the composition of the light plus the intensity of the light. But 2700 is what we had asked for because that was the best technology available. There are lower lights coming on the market, but whether they are available at the time that DDOT wants them, we don't know.
And can you just briefly explain what cities have been successful in having lower LED lights? Lower, warmer color temperature.
Well, there are a couple of different ones. Like out in Arizona, there's actually, and I believe it's Flagstaff, because I think that's where the Kitts Peak is. They put in actually they used an older but more efficient technology. They use something called low pressure sodium, which is more energy efficient than LEDs, but it's not new and it's not sexy, and you don't get these really cool modern looking fixtures with it. They're kind of ugly and boxy, but it has this it has a sort of a reddish light to it, but it's totally filterable, and it allows people to see the stars. Phoenix put in 2700 Kelvin lights, and the people there have been pretty happy in terms of the city people. They've been happy with the amount of light, but they've had to really work on getting shielding for their residents. They contracted out a hotline, if you have the glare into your house, we'll call and come fix it, and the calls blew up the hotline. So they said that they would have, if they were to do it again, they would have done a lot more work on getting the proper shielding on the front end. And that's something I'm concerned with for our lights too, because they say we can call in later, but...
And just so the audience knows, shielding means cutting it off so there's not like trespass.
Right, like those, those flaps on your car when you're driving and you can pull it down for the sun. So, it could be something that comes down from the light. It can also be the type of fixture. Some fixtures are more like a turtle shell, and the light's sort of up inside it, and so you don't get glare from it. If you go down to Lafayette School, there's some fixtures that go up straight, and then they kind of branch out with like a frisbee on top, and the light is sort of up tucked inside the frisbee, and they don't have glare either. But the ones that you see most typically are the ones like down by the Kennedy Center or Rock Creek Parkway between the zoo and the Kennedy Center, and if you're driving, you will get a lot of glare. Yeah.
Well, what about those lights that are considered historic, the teardrop? What kind of lights do they have, and do they meet the requirements that you'd like to see?
Yeah, so so they are horrible for light pollution, especially the globes. Absolutely horrible. They scatter it up, out, only a small portion of the light goes down. And we asked that we found something different. If you're going to use an historic fixture, use an historic amount of light. Get a flickering glass frame or 40-watt bulb, an incandescent. But they're putting in modern amounts of light in a fixture that was designed for a little, But the city doesn't want to change those out, nor do they want to change out the teardrops for financial reasons. But those two types, the teardrops and the globes, contribute most of the light pollution. The cobra heads, the flattish ones, are not nearly as light polluting.
Why is there opposition to having different lighting standards for different wards and for the commercial areas from this area?
Sure. DDOT said basically it's for economy of scale, for cost. If they buy, I'm going to make up a number here, but if they buy 100,000 of the same fixture, they're going to get a better unit price than if they buy 50,000 of one fixture and 50,000 of another fixture. We did ask them, we said, look, it's got to be that a 35-watt fixture is cheaper than a 110-watt fixture. And they agreed that that was true. But we haven't seen the math. We don't know the per unit price and to what extent prices would go up if they had a couple more options to give the lower wattages.
The 110 watt, where did you say those were like?
110 watts are scheduled for all residential streets. There are different grades of streets, like some are considered local, some are considered like collectors, minor arterials, major arterials, but DDOT did agree that even if the road is classified a little bit higher than a local, if people live on that, then they're going to try to keep it to 110 and not go up. So parts of Connecticut that are like maybe shops at the bottom but apartments above, for example, they would try to keep that at 110.
Okay.
Thank you.
Laura, thank you very much.
That's very impressive, and thank you for all the work that you've done on this issue, because you've really become our local expert. We appreciate that. You and Becky, between the two of you, I think we've got it covered. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the comments on the WMATA proposed restoration plans for the bus loop at 5720 Connecticut. Chris, Dan, you want to talk about that? Or should I? Okay.
WMATA presented plans for the new bus, what they're proposing to do with the bus shelter here on Connecticut Avenue. And generally, it looks like they're going to do a great job. They're following the historic preservation guidelines set by the National Park Service, which is a very tough way to do things. And architecturally, it's going to look very nice. On the downside, I think the Commission had a few comments. One, WMATA is not giving any consideration whatsoever to other uses of the property. And I think we had talked about at one time on weekends maybe having a farmer's market or some other kind of activity that livens up the commercial area. So that's out. And the other objection that I had is they're going to restore this thing in the back called a windscreen, which might have been a good thing when you had 10 buses an hour going through there, but one bus every 20 minutes creates a dark space, which I think is going to be a hangout for vagrants. Dan, did you have any comments on this thing?
Well, I guess the first thing is, I think we're all happy that we're finally getting around to doing it. I think we're all happy that dollars finally came through and that they're going to meet very strict. I think Jeff, I was just saying, I think we're all very happy that we're finally getting around to this. This is something that we've all looked at and thought about for 3 or 4 years now at least. Federal dollars came through and helped push WMATA to a point where they actually are doing this. It's not necessarily cheap, by the way, from what I've heard. I haven't heard the budget, but I heard it wasn't particularly, I don't think it's cheap. But nonetheless, it's a good thing. They're going to meet national registry standards. Hopefully Chevy Chase, I would hope, and maybe that's something that we can explore ANC to get the local Chevy Chase Historical Society to maybe look into engaging and do the paperwork for making it a historical site. WMATA will not do that. They do not have the staff, and it's just not something part of their plan that they'll do. They'll put the building back to standards, but they won't apply for through the process.
I can add to that comment. The Historic Preservation Office would like to make this bus turnaround a historic building, but there has to be an application by a citizen organization. They won't do the application themselves. So if an interested, maybe Historic Chevy Chase DC or some other or Chevy Chase Citizens Association could, make an application, then it could happen. But the city won't do it on their own.
Yeah,
Just before we leave that point, though, we tried that, or we tried to get people interested in doing that 3 years ago, was it, Dan?
3.
Something like that. And we talked and talked and talked. Nobody picked it up. Nobody went ahead and did it. So I agree. It would be great to do it, but somebody has to own it and say we're going to do it.
It's a heavy process. I mean, the application ends up being a good inch and a half, easily a good inch and a half, 2 inches of an application.
Yeah, this is just a question about the history of it. Is that the turnaround that the streetcars used to use before the, no, it isn't?
No.
Before the buses?
It's a bus loop.
Much further. It's always just been buses.
It's always been.
Yeah, it was built in the 40s.
Oh, okay.
Right. Probably got to turn around out of Chevy Chase Lake.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say last thing. Friends of Chevy Chase Circle has put together a letter of support, thanking WMATA, and they've submitted that and some other ideas officially before the deadline, testimony as well, just like theoretically we'll do tonight.
Yeah, my name is Robert Gordon. I'm the Vice President of the Chevy Chase Citizens Association. We agree for the most part with our colleagues on the ANC that the building is decrepit, and if we're going to keep that building, it needs to be improved. And we also agree that it should have a mixed use. What we don't agree is that this 78-year-old building on a very nice piece of property is necessarily the best and highest use for that property. I never experienced saying, what the plan is right now is to make it a stop for bus drivers to use the facilities, perhaps rest. It's not for the public, it's for bus drivers. I'm not sure that's the best way to use a very fine piece of land at the top of Connecticut Avenue. So I would hope that we can consider opening up the dialogue to a much bigger and more imaginative way of using that. And I mean, I can think of, well, there are several things I can think of, but I'm not a city planner. But I would like to have the ANC support perhaps a cost-benefit analysis or some other analysis to consider maybe commercial use, maybe mixed use for parking or some other higher purpose. We don't necessarily, in my view, have to rebuild that decrepit building. And that's, and we'll be preparing a letter to that effect to the right party.
I think that's going to run into a lot of opposition, obviously, at WMATA, because they are, I mean, we went over this with them a long time ago, trying to see whether they were willing to essentially give that space up. They aren't. The other thing is, it's now considered historic, and so I think doing anything other than restoring it as a historic building is going to run into a lot of problems as well. So from those two standpoints, I think it's going to get restored somehow, and I think WMATA is going to continue to have some use for it, but we can push as far as we can to try to get multi-uses, other uses, higher uses, as you said, but I think that's going to be a difficult battle to fight.
Well, the interesting part, and it got us thinking, was that they're not even asking for historic designation. So maybe it's not that big a deal. The other part of it is, in my observation, it's seldom used. And who knows what the use is going to be in the future. I mean, if it's a matter of 3 or 4 buses stopping and 3 or 4 bus drivers going in there to use the bathroom, is that a good use? To me, it's not. So I would like to see a little more homework on what it's going to be used for before they jump in. I mean, yes, granted, it's been many, many years on the drawing board, and maybe this objection should have occurred a long time ago. But at any rate, it's come to the fore now. Jerry?
At the last meeting, somebody came forward from WMATA that was the real estate person.
No, it was an architect.
No. Somebody that he called from the audience, that was in the audience, not the person that spoke. It was a woman that... There was a woman that he introduced as being the person dealing with the real estate.
She doesn't deal with real estate. She's the government relations person. She told us who the real estate person was.
Okay.
She gave us the name of the real estate person.
Have we contacted that person since then?
No.
Is that somebody that could be contacted to discuss some of the options that Robert just brought forward?
Always contact somebody.
Let me just put my 2 cents. I think Robert's got a point. I mean, the amount of space that little building and the bus turnaround takes up is fantastic when you consider there's only one bus every 20 minutes. I mean, the bus could easily go around the circle and the bus could park in front of the building. And it's possible you could restore the building and maybe put some other commercial buildings on each side of it or something like that. I mean, so I think there's enough. I think they ought to restore the building, but I don't know about. They're going to put all the asphalt back in the back. I mean, tons of impervious surfaces. And you could put 6, 7, 8 buses back there, which is ludicrous for that little place. So there is a basement disconnect.
Yeah, well, we did have in our draft comments 2 other things. One is with regard to lighting, that we have 2700 Kelvin as has been our recommendation all along. And also that with regard to the asphalt, that they use instead pervious pavements and pervious pavers for the sidewalks as well. All of that, I think, is consistent with their plan. I mean, it could be done within the context of their plan. The question is whether we want to take the next step and say, scrap your plan, let's do something completely different. I'm not ready to go that far. For me, and for right now, too, if we leave ourselves enough flexibility to be able to come back to them and say, let's revisit the uses of, I think restoration of this facility at this point is probably, that's going to happen. I don't know that there's a way to stop that. And as long as we urge them to consider other uses, I think that's about as far as we can go. That's where I would come out. I think it's worth preserving a historic building. I really do. So I put some value on that. Dan?
I completely agree with what you just said. I mean, I can't fathom
going backward at this point. Robert, I understand where you're coming from, and it's not that I necessarily disagree, but at the same time, I know where this has been for 3 or 4, if not 10 years. It is potentially, or is a historic building. I think the very fact that we can take it from where it is now, which is bad, to say the very least, bring it up to a very nice standard, work with WMATA, and just start putting pressure on them to start using this more of a community-oriented, mixed-use facility. The likelihood of, I just don't see going backward, turning this negative, and trying to stop the project, because I don't think you're ever going to, quite frankly, I don't think you're going to ever win, because it's their property and they're going to do what they want to do.
Can I just say something? I live on Connecticut Ave. I'm a bus driver, a bus rider, and I've been up there many times. And there's a fair number of passengers who sit there, waiting for buses. So it is used by them. People thought about maybe they could put something on the inside, like a place that sold newspapers and some other things, so that it'd be used, but not necessarily tear down the historic building or not make it difficult for people who are waiting for the bus to use it. So that's another idea to keep in mind.
Perhaps in the actual resolution that we have now, we could use some stronger language that addresses our request for a mixed-use facility, addresses some of the concerns that Robert just expressed, and not leave loophole-type language that they could say, yeah, we studied the possibility. Maybe we could just say, finally, the Commission urges WMATA to use the facility for additional purposes, and instead of saying at the end, the Commission requests that WMATA consider in its design, just say the Commission requests that WMATA design sufficient flexibility. If we give them a loophole, they'll take the loophole, which goes with the bus loop, I guess. But similarly to where in number 9 we say we urge WMATA to consider using permeable, to just say we urge WMATA to use permeable. So the more outs that we give them, the more they're likely to say, yeah, we considered, yeah, we looked at possibility, but let's be as strong as we can in the language that hopefully can address what we want, what CCCA just talked about, and what the community itself would find to be more useful in a mixed-use facility.
I disagree. I think the sense that I'm getting is that this has been, someone has been trying to get this spot rehabilitated for, in our comments, at least 5 years. And I think, while I agree with the sentiment that there should be more uses for it, I think this place needs to be fixed up. There's money to do it, and we should move forward with that and encourage WMATA to do that. And I think as they're doing it, and once they've done it, then I think we're in a much better position to say, now let's think about what else this can be used for. But we've been asking, residents have been asking for well over 5 years. We have documents for them to fix it, and now they're about to. And I don't think we should say, but wait 1 more or 5 more things. I think we should say, go ahead and fix it.
Well, that stays in there if you keep paragraph 7 in there. Clearly states that we support the bus loop facility. We're just asking that they, most of the things we asked for are probably going to save them money. I think permeable pavement could save them money, and not building a windscreen will definitely save them money. The fact that we're asking them to think about other uses, that's down the road. So I don't see. I think what Commissioner Mallitz has asked for is still saying we want the bus shelter to be fixed up. And I think we all want the bus shelter to be fixed up. It's done. It makes the whole neighborhood look bad.
As I understand Jerry's proposal, which I would accept, is that rather than saying that they consider these things, that we make it a little bit more affirmative, that you use permeable pavers, that you use the facility for other additional purposes. I think we can effectively encourage them to do that, even though, I mean, they may reject those things too. It's a little stronger than just saying consider those things. So I think that sounds like a good compromise to me. Is that okay with you, Abe?
Yeah, I think, and maybe it's just a small point, but I don't want to be, as I'm reading this, I'm seeing a narrative. The Chevy Chase Citizens Association and the ANC have been saying, we need to fix this place up for many years. And it seems like we're on the verge of doing that, and I don't want to be perceived as saying, yes, we need to fix it up, and we need to do a few other things also. I'd rather have it just get done, rather than perfect.
Yeah, we do want it to be done. I mean, for instance, to me it's important, all the efforts that the city is making now to address stormwater runoff, and we just say, okay, put more asphalt down there. That makes no sense to me, and they shouldn't do that. They should put some kind of pervious pavement in there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of the points. I think they're all good ideas. The windscreen, the pavers, additional uses, they all sound like good ideas.
Windscreen, you said $100,000.
Yeah, and I think in a perfect world they would take all these suggestions. I think just from our perspective, I think as an ANC, I want to be really consistent and perceived as consistent in our message that this place needs to be fixed up.
Well, as Chris said,
it needs to be fixed. And that's just, I mean, there are some of the details around additional things, maybe not so much. Ultimately, I think the comments are good, and I'm trying to vote for them. And if we make that a little stronger, I'd vote for that too. That's my only point.
One last comment, Jeff.
Yeah, one last question. Do you know what work is going on there now? I see construction work. They're doing something now. Does anybody know what they're doing?
It's Department of Public Works, and they're working on the sidewalk. It's not on the depot itself.
Oh, okay.
The depot itself has been, if I'm not mistaken, has been completely closed off for safety reasons.
Okay.
All sides of it.
Oh,
okay. With those modifications that Jerry suggested, I would move that we adopt these comments, which have to go in, by the way, tomorrow to WMATA. All those in favor? 6-0. Okay, thank you. All right, the next item is also some comments. Jerry, you want to talk about the small cell design guidelines from DDOT?
So we submitted a few months ago a resolution. Thank you. So we submitted a resolution a few months ago when City Council was first taking up the 5G activity. And there were also many comments, over 40 I think, that the City Council received.
This is DDOT.
Excuse me, DDOT received, and not many, if any, were taken into, maybe they took them into consideration, but no changes were made. On February 2nd, DDOT issued revised draft guidelines that didn't address our major concerns, which mostly had to do with health-related concerns that many jurisdictions in the U.S., in Europe, everywhere around the world are trying to address for this. It's not that people are saying that 5G isn't a good thing, it's that we need to take into consideration some of these health issues. So there's now another window for new resolutions, new testimony, and what's the date of the next one, Randy? Do you know?
I don't. It's before our next meeting, but I don't.
Okay. And just today, in the Washington Post, there was a story called Sprint's 5G wireless launch planned for May. Could be the country's first. And in the story, it talks about how Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, and KC will be the first, but then Washington will be online by the first half of the year. So it almost sounds as if no matter what anybody says, they're going ahead with this full speed by the end of June, which is the first half of the year, so that they're basically just going through the motions right now. I think Commissioner Madek sent us all something that was posted on another listserv someplace, that other jurisdictions in DC are concerned about this. There was also a letter in the Washington Post, in the letter to the editor section today, about the very same topic. And I think our resolution that we all have worked on addresses some of those things and just tries to push a stronger effort to look at this before jumping into something that's a bit of an unknown right now. And I'm sure you have some things to add to that.
No, I don't. Any other commissioners' comments? Go ahead, Chris.
Just quickly, I've mentioned this before, but you know, these 5G, the towers are about 200 feet apart, the antennas, and so that means on a typical block, every single block in the district just about will have one of these antennas, and if your house is across the street from the antenna, and you've got kids, I mean, I think I'd be worried, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. It's like it's being shoved down our throat, and you know, I do think there needs to be some due diligence. You know, the other issue I have is just the visual clutter of all these little antennas. You know, they're not small. They're on top of telephone poles, and then there's a wire cabinet on the base of the pole. And you know, there's going to be, as I said, there's going to be one of these in every block in DC. You know, we have a lot of clutter right now with all the cable lines and various power lines and phone lines, so it's just going to add even more. So, you know, I think there needs to be more due diligence done on this before they rush forward.
In addition to the health concerns, number 8 and 9 in our resolution talks about the lack of local control as to where these relay stations would exist. You know, it's not anything, you know, if you go way back in history, telegraph, when that first came about, there were relay stations. We have a historic one on Wisconsin Avenue in Tenley. There's a historic telegraph relay station. And it's the same principle, so that the signal can move faster and more efficiently. You put a lot of relay stations around. But the way that they're proposing to do it, the community, neighbors have no say in where any of those relay stations might go. So that's another issue within the resolution that we have all addressed.
Okay, any other comments, anyone? All right, is there a motion? Can we adopt these comments?
Yeah, I move that we adopt the resolution.
Okay, second? All those in favor? Did you vote? Yeah. Nope, I don't vote. 5-0. Okay. Dan abstains.
There's one.
What?
1-0.
And 0-1 abstention. Okay, the last substantive item on the agenda is the comments for the oversight hearings for DC Water and for DCRA. I'll talk about the DC Water testimony, and Chris can talk about the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. This testimony focuses really only on the CRIAC issue, the Clean Rivers Impervious Area charge by DC Water. And it takes a more holistic approach rather than trying to parse out who gets charged what for the impervious area that they have on their property. it steps back from it as it says, well, the biggest problem here is that the DC government does not pay anything for the impervious areas for streets, roads, sidewalks, and alleys. And that's about 40% of the impervious area in the district. And if DC paid its share, that would be about $40 million a year that could be used to reduce the charges for other DC water ratepayers. And this, as we've mentioned several times before, this is an ongoing issue because the rates for this CRIAC fee are going to increase. They're going to double essentially over the next decade. And so that it's going to become a burden not only on nonprofits and others who are being affected by it now quite adversely, but really on every DC water customer. It's going to be, it will make your water usage bill dwarf by comparison, because most of what you're going to be paying for in a decade is going to be a CRIAC fee, unless something is done about it. And so our testimony suggests that the district create a fund that could be then used to provide rebates or to provide tax credits for residents and for others who are particularly in need to reduce these CRIAC charges. It wouldn't be a straight 40% across the board, but rather it would be focused on those who have the greatest need. There could be a relief for every resident to a certain extent, but it would be focused also on those who have the greatest need. And that's the gist of this testimony, and it's asking the council and DC Water to step up to the plate and do something about this. I have made this proposal, by the way, to DC Water, to the CEO, who I've met through this stakeholder alliance that DC Water has created. And I got a surprisingly cold reaction to it. I mean, they said, "Oh, thank you very much, Randy. We really appreciate it." But you know, they didn't jump on it and say, "Yes, that's something that we will support." And that's what I think is lacking. Really, DC Water is being too passive in this process and not looking for solutions like this. So anyway, that's the gist of that testimony, and the hearing has.
You also have the problem between Knollwood and.
Yeah, that's a different issue, and that we've already addressed with DOEE.
Okay.
That was in the testimony for DOEE. This
okay.
DC Water. DC Water doesn't have anything to do with that.
Got it. Thank you.
So this testimony is tomorrow, as Anthony said, before Councilmember Chea's committee, and I'm actually listed number 1 on the witness list. I love that because I can get done and get out of there. But so we need to approve this tonight, and so I can testify tomorrow. So I would move that we adopt this testimony, and are there any suggested changes or modifications? Jerry?
No. Just one comment. I believe DC's budget surplus now is over $2.4 billion, and it grows by over $200 million every year. They have the cash, they can take care of this. I don't know what they're saving it for.
Yeah. Okay, is there a second? Okay, all those in favor? 6-0. Okay, thank you. Jerry, excuse me, Chris, you want to talk about the DCRA testimony?
So DCRA involves 5301 and 5303 Connecticut Ave. You ever been down Connecticut at the corner of Jennifer Street? You'll see a vacant lot and a building next to it, which looks like it was half demolished and is a real eyesore. That's what this is all about. So in August 2016, which is 2.5 years ago, a developer tore down 5301 with the intention of building low-rise apartment building on the lot, which is legal by zoning. And what he did is he propped up the building next door with a bunch of 2x4s, and he didn't do any more. He then managed to get the people of 5303, the building that's being propped up, to sell them their building. And in November of 2017, which is about a year and a half ago, he started to tear it down. He took all the historic woodwork out of it and the woodwork, all the molding on the outside, and then he just stopped. And absolutely nothing has happened to these two lots since then. So we've got a vacant lot with, full of bricks and debris, where kids can get in there and really hurt themselves, or take bricks and throw them. It's a real hazard. And 5303 it looks like it's going to fall down. As a matter of fact, we had to get DCRA there a number of times, the board to place up. At one time, there was a vagrant got in there and exposed himself to some school children that were walking down Connecticut Ave. So you have a situation that's really untenable. There was a truck parked in a vacant lot for a while, an abandoned vehicle. There was an outhouse that sits there abandoned that the neighbors claim smell. We've written a ton of letters to DCRA, called them up, and even recently at Phil Mendelson's quarterly briefing for for ANC commissioners, this was about DCRA, I presented this project to the head of DCRA and also Clarence Whitescarver, who's the acting chief building officer, and they agreed that there was a problem and it needed to be corrected. Absolutely nothing has been done. It's like, I don't know, this developer must have he must be an important person, that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say anything else. But, it really, it's all wrong, and something needs to be done about it, and that's what this calls for. So, does anybody have any comments on this, or?
Is this a testimony?
Yeah.
So this is a testimony that, unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town, so Randy's going to make it for me. But I think, so I move that this testimony be adopted by the commission.
The committee of the whole.
Okay, is there a second? All those in favor? 6-0, okay. All right, that brings us to the commission business. The minutes for our February 11th meeting and posted on our website and on the listservs. Are there any modifications, changes that haven't already been made? All those in favor of adopting those minutes? 6-0, okay. Checks, Alan? No checks, okay. All right, the items for our next meeting, ones I have now. A presentation has been requested by DDOT about on-demand transit options that could enhance mobility for ANC 34G within our ANC. What they're talking about basically, and Thelma, it's going to be interesting for Knollwood on this, because what they're talking about is perhaps a pilot program that would look at, rather than running the E6 bus during the middle of the day, they would instead have an online service, or on-call service. So you could call either a van or something like that would come by and pick you up on demand, rather than having the bus running the route. And they think that might end up being cheaper in the long run. They would also be able to give weekend service if they did that, or at least that's what they're thinking about, whereas the E6 bus doesn't run on the weekends. So that's what they want to come and make a presentation about. It's at the very earliest stages of conceptualizing what they might do, but Knollwood's going to be interested in that. Then the next thing is a discussion and possible vote on an application for a curb cut. This is one that it would be on Military Road. It's at 5365 29th Street and it's one that we've rejected previously. I talked to the engineer on it today and told them that we rejected it for good reason before, and I don't think there's going to be a change. But if they want to come ahead and make a presentation and they're going to pursue this, then we'll put it on the agenda. And then, are we going to be ready? No?
I'm still waiting for that.
Okay, well, we'll just hold it in abeyance until we're ready. Right, okay.
Chevy Chase Community Center?
Yes, yes.
Communities.
Good point. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, all of you AU students, journalism students.